perspectives on CCHI's 2022 National Job Task Analysis Study, the third one that CCHI has conducted to date, and that really just launched this week, by the way. So joining us is Brigida González Salvador, a trilingual interpreter of Mixteco Spanish English, born in a town in Oaxaca, Mexico. Sorry for that. Who basically grew up speaking Mixteco and then learned her Spanish and her English. She is a core CHI certified healthcare interpreter, also a lead interpreter at Natividad Hospital in Salinas, California, as well as a licensed interpreter trainer. Joining us as well is Emily Cielen. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. And she is with us today as a certified Spanish English healthcare interpreter who has actually given much of her time to this year's job task analysis project, as she has been on board as a task force subject matter expert. So we're thrilled to have you here as well today, along with Brigida. And joining us from Washington State, last but far from least, is Tim Moriarty. Tim has been the manager of the Interpreter and Translation Services Department at Bay State Health in Western Massachusetts for the past 20 years. He has a bachelor's in Hispanic Studies and a master's in Public Administration from Columbia University, both. Tim has worked in the nonprofit sector for 35 years, both in the US and in Latin America. A certified Spanish healthcare interpreter himself, he works with a staff of over 50 interpreters in 8 languages, as well as full time schedulers, trainers, and even a document translations coordinator. Tim is currently the Vice President of the National Council on Interpreting in Healthcare and an active member of the Forum on the Coordination of Interpreter Services, which is an organization that was founded in Massachusetts. I also really want to take a moment to thank our ASL interpreter, who is sponsored by Linguava today, without whom this roundtable exchange would not be accessible to our fellow ASL community members. So now, without further ado, Tim, please take it away.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to be part of this conversation, or at least hearing us as part of this community conversation. So the job task analysis, it sounds kind of dry, but actually by the end of the conversation, I think you'll understand how important it is and how you can participate and be a really important part of this year's job task analysis. Brigida, can you talk to us a little bit about, you said that you have taken the job task analysis in the past. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it was like for you and why you think it's important?
Yes, of course. Well, I wanted to take the time and thank everybody for allowing me to be here. I'm very happy to be able to help out with this. So I think the job task analysis is important because I see it as an opportunity to express the challenges that we interpreters see in the field, our input, and so I took it because I wanted to give my input and in my experience being trilingual interpreters, challenges that I overcame and how I handle them. And so I would encourage everybody to take the opportunity and to do the survey. I think is very important. Also encourage all the Indigenous interpreters or trilingual interpreters out there to please do the survey. It's very important to hear from them as well. They're already out there doing the job or working in the profession. So I would encourage them to also take the opportunity and do it.
So Emily, you have been intimately involved this year in the job task analysis. Can you talk to us a little bit about, Zoe talked about how this is the third job task analysis that CCHI is undertaking. Can you talk about why it's important to do them?
Absolutely. Like Brigida, I had taken the survey as an interpreter, a community member interested in giving my input on what the profession looks like to me. And when I was part of the panel that was kind of crafting the survey, what tasks, what specific things we'd include, how we'd word them, we had interpreters from many different fields, some who were staff interpreters at a hospital, others who are freelancers, others who will work purely remotely with VRI and over the phone interpreting. And we all had different ideas about what was important that was missing. Because a lot of the bread and butter, we can all agree. You interpret correctly and completely. You don't leave anything out. You don't interject your own opinions. That I feel like we all agree on. But there are some of these nuanced areas where someone says, hey, you know what? As a VRI interpreter, asking me to do this is really hard, or here's something that happens that we don't have a framework for. And so it was so important to get those views from all different areas together so we could really have a survey where everybody could feel that what they do is represented.
Great. And of course, the job task analysis really provides direct feedback and input as to how the certification exam will be updated, because it does get updated on a regular basis. And for me, when I thought about it, and I have taken it before, and I did take this year's job task analysis earlier this week, and I would encourage everyone to do that, and we'll be encouraging you throughout this half hour to take the job task analysis this year. It's really important. For me, it was thinking about, okay, at some point in my life, I know I've taken tests when I didn't know what I was going to be tested on, when I wasn't as prepared as I could be. And this is a chance for us to say, this is what you should test us on. This is what we do and how we do it. And it allows some open fields so you can provide additional information, but most of it is, yes, we do this. Oh, this is the percentage that we do this. This isn't important or as important anymore, but this new thing is really important now, especially with COVID-19 and so much more virtual interpreting. So for me, it was thinking about that. And when I was studying for my management degree, one of the things they talked about when you're trying to improve a process is to actually go to the people who carry out the process. In this case, it's how do you improve something for interpreters and to test interpreting? Well, you go to the interpreters especially, but the administrators and trainers are also essential to this because they're the ones who are helping the interpreters learn the field. Because most of us, when we start out, haven't had a college education in interpreting. Some people are lucky enough to have had that, but most of us start pretty much from scratch, and we have to be trained how to interpret. And so it's important that not just the interpreter themselves, people in the field know what will be coming, but also that the trainers and the administrators who deal with this every day and help to train new interpreters actually can also provide feedback for the job task analysis. So I'm going to ask Emily, because she was so intimately involved, what do we hope to get out of JTA? What do we hope it will capture?
Well, I think we really hope that it will capture a breadth of experiences of interpreters about what they do, how often they do it. We want to know if things continue to be as important as they've always been, certain interpreting skills, some of them may be less frequently used interventions, advocacy. We want to know how often people are actually doing those things in their day-to-day job, even things that can vary so much, like site translation, document translation. We want to know how much interpreters are doing that, because if you are a video interpreter, you might do a little site translation. Somebody like get the paper right up to the camera there. But for the most part, you're not going to dive into translating discharge paperwork and things like that. So we want to kind of see how things have shifted in these last 6-7 years, because the landscape for us has changed so much.
Great, thank you. Brigida, what about you? What do you think will be important for CCHI, or what will be important for you to get out of the results of the JTA, the job task analysis this year?
Well, like you said, things happened, things changed, especially with the pandemic. A lot of change happened. We had to learn new terminology, how to handle situations like that, how to interpret in settings like that. So and in this survey, I really hope it captures more data um, uh, in general interpreting, but I'm really interested in also, I'm hoping it captures more data on in trilingual interpreters, because I know there's a lot of them out there, and it's easy to feel like you don't belong to a group, or you can't voice out your concern. So I am really encouraging them, and I'm really hoping to hear from them how, what within the years, how many changes, they went through. I know I can say for me, I did learn a lot during these past years. I worked in the field of my experience. I started interpreting about 6 years ago, and I learned everything from scratch. But because of my language, there's a lot of um, terminology languages, because some words can be interpreted into what the provider is saying. So I have to kind of sit down, create a glossary. Okay, what do these words mean? How do I interpret this? And when the doctor is speaking, how do I tell my patient this? How do I transfer that meaning to my language? So I really am interested that, hopefully we're able to capture more data on Indigenous.
Wonderful. I'm actually going to come right back to you, Brigida, because one of the things you said in your first interaction with us was about encouraging Indigenous interpreters. And you kind of mentioned it again this time as well. We strongly expect anyway, that there will be an awful lot of Spanish interpreters who respond to this survey. And it's essential that they do. Everybody should participate. Everybody who's in the field, your voice is important. But I think your point is very well taken, that oftentimes we think about Spanish and some of the larger language groups, and the smaller language groups are not as well represented. So why do you feel that that's important? I know it was nice for me to see on the job task analysis this year that you could list more than one non-English language that you interpret for. So very cool. Why do you think it's so important to have as many people as possible who speak Indigenous languages, who speak languages of lesser diffusion, as we call them in the United States within our field? Why is that so important?
I think that's very important because there's a lot of those interpreters already in the profession. And in my experience, I noticed that there isn't too many training for them. And so it's important to hear from them, okay, well, I'm not getting enough training. It's hard to find those resources, or I'm doing this, I wasn't aware I wasn't supposed to. So, I think it's very important to hear from them as well. I know in my experience, I've in the past felt like, well, it's hard to, how do I even connect to a webinar? How do I find those resources? How do I do this? How do I do that? But eventually, as I started getting myself more involved in the profession, like, okay, I want to learn about this. I want to do this. I want to know, but how do I get to that point? How do I find those resources? How do I find someone to help me? So I'm thinking of those trilingual interpreters out there. They're probably working as a self-employed or contractors. So I'm wondering how much resources do they have, or how much help do they have, or training do they have, especially with, with the language. There's a lot of challenges that we come across.
Great, thank you very much. We want to make sure that the languages of lesser diffusion, the smaller language groups throughout the country, are well represented. So everyone is welcome and strongly encouraged to take the job task analysis as soon as you can. I was asking Natalia a little bit earlier, what is the deadline? And she said the drop dead deadline is June 20th. But if you're like me, if you don't do it now, you're probably not going to do it. So we're almost at the weekend. So I would strongly encourage you to take some time to do it. For those of you who need a little incentive, let's talk about what incentives we have here. First of all, it may take you an hour or an hour and a half. It took me about an hour and a half. And part of the reason was because there were some great links where when they were talking about things like, well, what level of fluency do you think someone should have to be an interpreter? they actually provided the links where you could read the description of the actual explanation of what the different levels of fluency are. And then I was able to determine what I thought was the appropriate level for interpreters to have in the field. So it took me about an hour and a half. CCHI has said that for those who are nationally certified through CCHI, you will get 1 hour's worth of CEUs for your recertification. So that's awesome. And that, by the way, is a free hour. And that's usually about $50 an hour for anything that is CEU related. So that's a great bonus for you, a freebie for a little bit of your time. There are also 20, yes, 20 Amazon gift cards that will be handed out, and it'll be a raffle, and $25 gift certificates will be raffled off. So if you need that little encouragement, that's great encouragement. So we hope that you will take advantage of it, and we're trying to encourage you to take it. One of the components that was interesting, and I know it's a little challenging to understand if it's a new topic for you, so I'll speak a little bit, but then I'll ask Emily to speak a little bit more about it, is the E2E test that CCHI is proposing to test the fluency of individuals like Brehira, who speaks an Indigenous language. There will never be a national test in that language available, at least I don't believe so, even though it is in Mexico, a very large language group. And so the E2E, or English to English test, is a test where we will, or CCHI, I should say, will test someone's capability to interpret, but not through their non-English language. The whole test is actually done in English, and it's a very interesting concept. For anyone who has gone through interpreting and translation school, you would have taken some of these tasks or tests. And it is to simulate a non-English language test, but by using only English. And so things like memory will be tested. But it's a hard concept to understand. And for anyone who wants more information, before you start to take the job task analysis, there was actually a discussion like the one we're having today, specifically on the E2E. And that was last December of 2021. So you can go back and take a look at that conversation that happened. It really does a great job explaining it, and how the pilot that was done showed that this test actually works well to compare people who are taking a test only in English to test their ability to interpret. So Emily, I don't know if that was a good job of explaining it, but I tried. If you can kind of fill in the blanks and talk about the E2E a little bit more, please.
Absolutely. I'll speak to that as far as my knowledge goes. And I think it is a really interesting concept. Once you get your brain around the idea that you can test the skills of interpreting outside of that, that conversion of language from one to another, you think about being able to take a concept and re-explain it in different words. If you were to like read a paragraph on how, how a heart medication works, I don't know, random example, and be able to read it and say in different words, okay, this is a medicine that helps your heart and it works by doing X, Y, Z. The ability to take that information and synthesize a different way to say it. That's a skill. And it's a skill we use when we go between languages, when there's not a word, when there's not a concept. Or being able to shadow. So someone is talking to one side and I'm listening and I'm just repeating the exact same thing they're saying. It's going in, it's going out, because that's a skill we use with simultaneous interpreting, to be able to like have those two streams going at the same time. So there, and when you take the survey, you'll get to read about each of the components that exam will have. And I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I almost want to take it just to see, because it is such, to me, like a mind-blowing concept that you can take that second language out of the equation entirely and just test kind of the pure skill. So it's very cool.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And we're not going to spend more time on the E2E in terms of explaining it, because as Emily said, there are nice explanations, they're brief explanations, but they're very clear explanations of the E2E as part of the job task analysis, because we are hoping, CCHI is hoping to start this in the near future for those people who can only get core certification right now, so that they will be able to have a certification beyond core to really confirm that they know how to interpret, which is fabulous. So you don't need to look at the half an hour discussion like we're having today about the ETE. It may fill you in with some additional information, but all of the information you need is actually on the job task analysis. What I did when I was taking it and I was thinking about each of those questions, I actually closed my eyes and thought about what they were describing so I could better understand, okay, if I did this, what would it be like as, going from English into Spanish or Spanish into English? What does that model, or what does that work to represent? And it was really interesting how right away it was like, oh, that would represent this, or I'm testing this. So very, very cool and interesting for CCHI to be doing this. And from what I understand, it was a really rigorous test, and there's a wonderful report about how well it was studied. And we're really excited that this will be coming out. But guess what? You have the ability to give your opinion about it and to have your feedback count. So that's part of this job task analysis. And we're really encouraging you to take the test, I'm sorry, not a test, to take the job task analysis as soon as possible. It is not a test. There are no right answers. It's your answers that are right in this case. And Idali, thank you for saying that. As an administrator, I did the same thing. Idali mentioned that she sent out the list to all of her staff members so that they would take the job task analysis. Now we're asking everybody who is nationally certified, but also everybody who's working in the field as an interpreter. If you're an interpreter, but you're not certified, you don't have core certification, you may be certified by another entity, you may have a certificate, you completed a certificate program, we want you to take the survey. And it may help inform you a little bit more about the field, things you hadn't thought about before. So thank you. I know for us at our hospital, and we're a poor department like most interpreter services departments are, but because this is so important, and this is a national survey that we want lots of responses to, I'm encouraging my staff, in addition to the great stuff you already can get by taking it, but I'm encouraging my staff by actually paying them for their time, so that they will take the test and they will take the job task analysis, and they will get, for me, I'm providing 2 hours so that they can take it relaxed at home, and be paid for that time as work time, as a meeting, because it's that important for me and for our field. So I feel very strongly about that. Let's see.
Can I add something, Tim?
Please do, Brigida.
So regarding that, it's something that we kind of have been doing here in Ativida, but what we do is a peer assessment because we want to make sure the individual, the interpreter has, we want to know like the baseline knowledge of the language, right? Because anybody can say, well, I speak Spanish, I speak English, and I speak an Indigenous or a native language. I want to go and get certified, but I think it's very important to also know, well, what level, and so we do a peer assessment if an interpreter comes on board, or if someone's applying, or we know of an interpreter that wants to do internship. In the past, we had an internship, 6-month internship program here in Ativida. So we would see, okay, let's do a peer assessment. You speak Mixteco de Guerrero, you speak Mixteco de Guerrero. Okay, we'll get one that is already trained, that has been already in the profession, and like that rater would tell us then, oh, indeed, this person is qualified to speak the language.
Right, thank you. And the ETE would not be the only thing that CCHI would be looking at. We do need to, of course, test fluency in whatever way we can do that. It may be a national test over the phone, over video, or it could be, as you're saying, a peer-to-peer, where someone who is recognized as being fluent in the language does provide verification of someone's fluency. So the ETE would just be about the person's ability to do the skill part of it, but the language part of it absolutely has to be assessed separately. So Emily, what else would you want to say about this year's job task analysis and its importance?
Well, I would say that it's always important to take stock of the current state of your profession, what you do. But I think that right now we're coming off of 3 years really of so much upheaval, change in modalities, a renewed interest in interpreter safety from an infection control point of view, as well as interpreter health and well-being for those of us who maybe have experienced very highly emotional, perhaps even traumatic work during this time. So I think right now it's such a key moment to stop, look at what we do, and just share your voice, share your experience of what your profession looks like now in comparison to 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the last time they did this survey, so that the people who design these exams can really take into account all of those different areas of professional performance, but also professional well-being and professional safety, because it's truly a different landscape now than it was 3 years ago.
Thank you so much. And Brigida, what about you? Final comments? We're hard to believe, but we're almost at the end of our half hour.
Oh, that was really fast.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's very important to take advantage of this opportunity and give your input. It's important to hear from everybody. Organizations that work with interpreters, interpreters within themselves, supervisors, managers. It's important to hear from them and what their experience is or changes that have occurred. So I am very thankful that I was able to participate in this.
Thank you very much. I know for me, the job task analysis is a great opportunity to update things, right? To update the tests, to find out what's going on nationally in terms of interpreting in healthcare. I've been in the field now almost 20 years in July, and the field has changed quite a bit. The only video that was used when I started was for the deaf who needed American Sign Language as a way to communicate, and video was the only way to do it. And it was really nascent. It was just beginning at that point. Well, the last 2 or 3 years, as Emily has talked about, because of COVID, so much more is going on with video than ever before, and telephonic, and where everybody in video and telephonic used to be in call centers, oftentimes people are working from home now. And what is that doing? And ergonomically, are you set up properly and so forth? So the field has changed enormously, and CCHI takes the time to check in on the field, on the people who are doing the job, to make sure that we're staying up with what's going on with you. But in order to be able to do that, we need your direct feedback. As administrators, as CCHI executive director or board members, we can say, oh, this is what we see, but we're not everywhere in the country. We're not in your situation. We want to find out what's going on specifically with you. And so please, please, please take the time. I would plan on an hour and a half, and if you're done in an hour, awesome. If it takes you longer, that's okay. It's not a test. It's a great opportunity to inform yourself about what's going on in the field, but a wonderful opportunity to inform us about what you're doing in the field and how your work has changed, so that we can adapt as we need to.
Also, to take advantage of the comment section in case there's something in your mind that you want to say, take advantage of that comment section.
That's right, Brigida. Thank you. I did mention that most of it is percentages or checking boxes, but there are open fields where you can put your comments in of things that you think are important for various aspects of the job task analysis. So we do want to thank you for your time this afternoon. This half hour goes by so quickly. This will be available soon on the CCHI, I think it's the YouTube page. And so we encourage you to spread this out to your colleagues as you send out the job task analysis to them as well, so that they may understand a little bit more about it. And if you are interested in knowing more about the E2E or English to English test, again, please go back to the conversation that was had in December of last year, December 2021. It was a great conversation that day. We hope today was worth your time. We hope we provided you a little bit of information regarding the job task analysis 2022. And we really want to hear from thousands of interpreters, administrators, trainers, etc., throughout the country.
Well, thank you. That was wonderful, everybody. This is Zoe Schutzman. I just want to take a moment to thank our three roundtablists. I'm trying to coin the term, and as well our wonderful ASL interpreter from Linguaba. As usual, it never ceases to amaze me how interactive you guys become with one another, even though you've just met. And this just, I hope, has made people want to engage, get involved, do the survey, find out more across the board. So thank you for speaking to this topic today. And I look forward to the next possible interesting topic over the course of the months to come. As usual, I just want to make people aware to look out for those announcements as well. This will be posted, yes, Tim, to the YouTube channel. So you were correct in that regard. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Okay, we're going to sign off now.